So getting back to this hood, I decided to make a second version. So I took the paper pattern and then made a pattern out of the poster board. And now I'm going to use Sharpie to go around the pattern, trying to make a really nice tracing, so to speak. Then I'll cut right through the middle of the line on the bandsaw of this Sharpie and then hand file the edges. Then I'll put it in the English wheel. I think I'd mentioned it before, but my good friend Steve Vinson, he purchased this English wheel from Harbor Freight and then parked it over here. He made a couple parts with it, and I was glad to have it. And he needed the space, so that worked out. Now I can experiment. And then he went and bought the rubber band for the wheel. So I'm learning about it. It comes with 6 different wheels, and I don't know what these numbers represent, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, but this one down here, the 12, has the least amount of radius, and of course this has the most. So I'm using the second wheel, number 3, to make the new hood. And so let's see how that turns out. Here is my second attempt at this hood piece, and it turned out way better. I'm real happy with it. I took my time, less pressure, and it turned out pretty good. I can live with it. I'm focusing on these side panels now. It's going to go up underneath this 3/4 inch and then down to the string. And this is the area where the hood trim will be. On this model here, you can see it's this trim right here. And basically I want that to be on a full panel. No breaks where that trim goes. That'll be my goal anyway. Okay, so I used this string to get it all laid out and even and eyeballed it up. Looks good. So now I'm going to measure and make a couple of patterns here. I have the 2 paper patterns made for the next pieces, so let's transfer this to the metal. So this is a practice piece, and as it has been explained to me, this rubber band on this upper wheel allows this to create a 2-dimensional shape. If I didn't have the rubber band on here, this would be more of a crown in both directions. So in a little while I have to curve this panel a little bit, so I will take this rubber band off and go to a flatter wheel to try to get some curve in the panel. So anyway, this makes a pretty nice radius, and depending on how tight I have it, but I can curl this thing up pretty good. So here's my next panel. This one was tricky because it curves this way and this way. So using 2 different wheels on the English wheel, I was able to get it to curve this way. I used the rubber band to get it to curve this way. Alright, so that's pretty close. I have the other side on now. It took me 2 tries, both sides actually. It's tougher than I thought, but little by little I figured out that I had to roll the top edge and then curve the panel. So I think it'll work. Now I got to concentrate on the next 2 panels. I'm working on these lower panels, lower front panels, And I made a pattern because it has to clear the tie rod and have a little room for suspension travel. And where these exit on either side are slightly different, so I made a pattern for each side. Here I've transferred the pattern and cut out the panels, so they're ready to install. And while I was test fitting the paper pattern, I determined that these panels have a slight curve to them. I don't think there's a straight panel on this car. Okay, I'm happy to say that these two lower panels went on pretty good. Didn't have to do much except line them up. And it's starting to take shape. Now for the pattern to the bottom right front. I'll do a similar arrangement on the other side. I'll transfer this to metal directly. I transferred the pattern onto the aluminum. I have the right front and the left front. So now it's onto the English wheel to give these panels some shape. I'm making pretty good progress on this lower panel. I have it attached on the two ends, and then I have to trim it a little more here. But that English wheel made quick work of you know, this curve and then just a slight curve that way. Okay. So about 25 years ago, I scored this rotary punch and never got around to setting it up. So just recently, I bought a 5/32 die, and I'm starting to use it now. And it does a great job of punching holes. Normally I'd be drilling these out with a drill bit, which obviously works, but this is much quicker and cleaner. Nice addition. Cuts a nice hole. Punches a nice hole. Alright. One more right there. Okay. This side is coming along. I'm using the clecos to hold everything in place, and now I'm ready to drill some holes. Okay, this side's looking pretty good. I'm anxious to start working on the nose. I think I'll make a couple patterns and see what happens. I've been thinking about this side here. When I did these 6 panels, I hadn't learned yet what I learned when I did these 3 panels, so I might go back and redo these. We'll see. It's easy enough to drill out the rivets and remove them. I think I'll work on the nose first though. I've shifted my focus to the nose now, and I've been working on this paper pattern. I can't say that I know exactly what I'm going to be doing here. I'm kind of working it out as I go. So this may or may not be successful, but I got to start somewhere. Okay, continuing on. I think I'm about ready to transfer this pattern onto some 40 thousandths. Here I have my two patterns, right and left, and then I have a couple pieces of aluminum. I'm using 40 thousandths 3003. So I'll put these on here. I'm learning as I'm going here. I don't know really what I'm doing. I just watch YouTube videos and do this by trial and error. So I'm just going to rough trace around this. Give myself a little bit extra. Trim it later. Okay. Alright, I'll cut that out on the bandsaw and then I'll start shaping with the English wheel. I think that's where I'll start. Okay, let's move on. I rearranged the shop out here the last couple of months. I've had these bolt bins for a while and I filled those up, and I've had that spinner in storage, so I'm using it to catch all kinds of things. I moved the bandsaw over here and the belt disc next to each other and the drill press. And then you know, I really need to learn to MIG weld or TIG weld. You know, there's the MIG machine. And I've had this TIG machine for easily 25 years, and it's been in storage for a long, long time. We used to use it down at the shop. But I brought it home and set it up, and I've been practicing, and my TIG welds are awful, just ridiculous. But you got to start somewhere, right? Here's a few of my passes. God, what a mess. But I'm learning how to grind the tungsten and what to use, and it's a slow process, but someday I'll be able to do it. That's how I started out with the MIG. I didn't know jack, and over time I've learned how to work it reasonably well. Still have a long way to go. So anyway, there's old number 27 and the monocar. That's just back from a weekend out in the desert running around in the dirt. Okay, so what do you say we cut these, get them roughed out. There's one of them. I like having a metal cutting bandsaw. It makes quick work of cutting these out. I'll need to run a file around it and deburr them. But then I can start shaping the panels. Now, being that this is the first time I've ever put any real shape into a panel, I don't know what's going to happen. I might have to make them again. But that's the whole point of this video. It's all trial and error. We're kind of learning as we go and see what happens. Okay, let's do it. I took off the front spring to allow me to test fit this panel 100 times. So not knowing exactly where to start, I just kind of gave this a little shape by bending it over my knee. And that kind of gets it going in the right direction, I'm thinking. Alright. Let's go to work on the wheel. Okay, so the first thing I did is I had the rubber band in place and I put on a lower crown anvil. And I ran a few passes and I didn't think it was too tight, but I made these big creases. I just had it too tight. So then I loosened up the tension here, took the rubber band off, and I just started working it. I determined that I need a little bit of curve this way, which was down here, but at the top it needed to kind of roll in. So that's what this setup is now, to move this inward. So I'm working it right in here to get it to curve just at the top. And lo and behold, with less pressure and more passes, it's starting to take shape. So let me show you how it's fitting on the buck at this point. Alright, so in the process of getting it to this shape, I test fitted it against the buck probably 15 or 20 times. So I line up to my tape mark over here, it's resting on the axle, and I hold it in place. It fits real nice down here, and you can see right here, it needs to roll in. But what I think I'll do first is trim this up a little bit. It's still considerably large. I don't want to get right to the line yet, but I definitely want to take off some of this extra material. I think it'll make it easier to get my final shape. Alright, this is fun and challenging. Okay, so here I have the left front panel and here's my pattern. So I'm going to put this on here. See, I have quite a bit of excess here. But I'll tape it down. Okay, so now I'm going to trace it pretty much exact, but I'm not going to cut it there yet. Just a reference for when I'm eyeballing it up. I'll still trim it a little bit large. You can see how it's starting to take on the shape. It's not quite there yet though. The pattern doesn't fit all that well just yet. Now I'll probably clean these lines off with some lacquer thinner later once it's a little closer, and I'll put this on there again, and that would be a more exact line. These are just eyeball reference lines at this point. Okay, so I'm going to trim this up a little bit and then we'll go back to the wheel. You can see that I'm getting close here. I'm having trouble getting this to curve in. I tried the English wheel a little bit. I'm going at it with the hammer, and hopefully I can get that to lay down. I gotta shrink it a little bit, I guess. But otherwise, for a first attempt, I guess it's not too bad. The more I think about this, I probably should have put this curve in the panel first before anything else. At least that's my thinking. But in an attempt to get this to roll in, I'm using the dolly here. Well, I've ended up making a mess out of this. I'm gonna have to start over. I just overworked the metal. I don't really know what I'm doing. It's disappointing, but I guess that's the learning process. This thing is ruined. Alright, we'll try again. Yes, I'm still disappointed that that one didn't work out. But I kept plugging away here, just grabbed a piece of scrap and started working this top section first. And you can see I'm having success there. The question is, when I shape the lower half, will it change the upper half? I guess I'll find out. I have to just keep working this and practicing until I can figure out what moves to make. But it's encouraging that I got it to lay down here close enough for me anyway. Okay, let's keep working this piece of scrap. So as I'm working the lower half, it's pulling away just a little bit, but I think I can keep that from going too far. Yeah, a little bit of work right here and I can get this to lay down. So I'll just keep practicing. That's the key here. Just keep running it back and forth until I really learn what I'm doing. I decided to take a break on these lower panels and focus on this cap right here. I want to make a paper pattern, and so this tape right here represents the outside edge of the part that I want. So I'll tape some pieces together here and create the pattern fairly quickly, I think. It's a little bit rough, but nonetheless a pattern. I can live with that. Well, I've got a long way to go on this. I'm getting it to shrink, but I still don't really know what I'm doing. I'm trying different things, and
It's going to take me a while to figure this out. I'll probably have to get some help. So, I think I'm getting close to the 30-minute mark here. Let's call it an end to this segment. And maybe in the next video we'll get this nose figured out. There's a local class that I can take on how to shape metal. I might do that. Steve Vincent took it and he's having success, so maybe I'll report on that in the next segment. Alright, so as always, thanks for watching everybody. We'll see you next time.